It is now 10 a.m. and we are ready to begin our first panel of the day, which is the future of psychedelic medicine, what is possible? I've already, in terms of our panelists, we have Phil Wolfson, who just gave our keynote. We also have Will van Derveer, who just introduced himself or came on the call. Mark Braunstein, and Scott Shannon, who is apparently stuck in traffic right now, and hopefully will be here as soon as he is able. And we may be able to Zoom him in if there's some challenges logistically. So I've already given the introduction for Phil prior to the keynote. So I'd like to move ahead and introduce Scott Shannon ahead of time. So Scott Shannon is my teacher, my friend, and my inspiration. Scott has been a student of consciousness since his honors thesis on that topic at the University of Arizona in the 1970s. Scott is a past president of the American Holistic Medical Association and president of the American Board of Integrative Holistic Medicine. He serves as a site investigator, a site principal investigator, and therapist for the phase 3 trial of MDMA-assisted psychotherapy for PTSD sponsored by MAPS. Scott founded the Psychedelic Research and Training Institute, known as PRADI, to train professionals in ketamine-assisted psychotherapy and deliver clinically relevant studies. He lectures all over the world to professional groups interested in a deeper look at mental health and a paradigm shifting mental health issues and a paradigm shifting perspective about transformative care. I'd like to next introduce Will van Derveer. Will is a co-founder of the Integrative Psychiatry Institute, which teaches doctors how to recognize and resolve an expanded spectrum of root causes of mental illness. I should have also mentioned, Will is my teacher, my friend, and also my inspiration. His clinic in Boulder, Colorado, provides integrative psychiatry and ketamine-assisted psychotherapy for treatment-resistant depression and PTSD. In addition to his clinical practice and teaching, he has also been involved with several studies sponsored by MAPS involving MDMA-assisted psychotherapy for chronic treatment-resistant PTSD. Will regards unresolved emotional trauma as the most significant root cause of psychiatric symptoms in integrative psychiatry practice, along with gut issues, hormone imbalance, inflammation, environmental toxins, and other integrative medicine challenges. He trained in somatic experiencing, EMDR, internal family systems, and other psychotherapy techniques. And now I'd like to introduce our last member of this panel, who's sitting across from me, Dr. Mark Braunstein. Mark is also my teacher, my friend, and my inspiration. Dr. B is a whole health psychiatrist. He completed his residency in general psychiatry and his fellowship in child and adolescent psychiatry in 1997. Shortly thereafter, he began exploring the use of psychoactive plant medicines in the treatment of various psychiatric conditions in both children and adults. With over 22 years of clinical experience, Dr. B has pioneered a new path in psychiatric care that integrates wilderness programming, exercise, diet, spirituality, and natural medicines. Driven by a passion to educate and elevate humanity to a healthier and happier place, Dr. B is involved in multiple projects focused on expanding access, awareness, research, and safety in the field of psychedelics. What a crew. So the proposed format is I'd like to pose an opening round of questions to each of our panel members. And I'd like to give everyone approximately 4 minutes to answer to respond to the question. And And what I'll do is, if it's my responsibility to keep time. So what I'll do is, with a show of my finger, I'll flash a 1, meaning there's approximately 1 minute left. And then when there's 30 seconds left, it's 3-0. And then, as that, that time passes, I'll give a little sign with my finger, meaning that it's time to move on. Okay. So I'd first like to start with Phil. And give me 1 second. Let me grab my questions.
Do you have a mute button in case one of us gets out of control?
Okay. So Phil, I'd like to start with you. From your point of view, what's the best possible outcome for the future of psychedelic medicine? And what is your group either doing or dreaming of doing to make this a reality?
Well, it's a wonderful question. It's one I've been actually enjoying thinking about. I enjoy thinking about it because my view is it's so utopian, but realizable. We have a two-stream thing going where we have this massive underground use of psychedelics. And it's been going on because of repression and legalization. And, we had a happy period that I was part of when we didn't have that kind of suppression. We had a bit of it, but, we could do lots of things. We could meet, we could help people, we could create our own bodies, our own ethical ways of dealing with people and ourselves. And then, 1986 occurred and MDMA was shut down, unfortunately and irresponsibly. And then you have this massive upsurge. And, we're having a massive upsurge now. The number of people using substances, often outside of appropriate settings that are good for them, is enormous. So I always look towards legalization. And people argue, well, full legalization, oh, that's not a good thing. So my view of legalization, and I hope it will occur, probably not in my lifetime, is that we have available resources and we have ways of thinking of helping people to understand the powers of these medicines, how to use it, and that, we apply that inspirationally in therapeutic settings that are available to humans free of charge, okay? I'm one of those free of charge utopians, right? So when you get the money out of the system, you get a lot of the hassle, a lot of the drama, a lot of the crime, it goes away, which, I think these are valuable substances, and the money inducement is a terrible impact on us in every way possible, from police systems and court systems and huge numbers of people in prison. And we always do that instead of education. So in my utopia, we have legalization, we have, thoughtful use, we have resources, and we have the psychotherapeutic availability to make this a practice for human beings that's worthwhile. So what are we doing about that? In this moment, I'm focused on the Ketamine Research Foundation, on doing real research to show the values of this medicine, to develop methodologies that are appropriate to it, to prepare ourselves for when other medications enter our toolbox, and to do the sharing group under Indra's Net Coalition as a worldwide helpful entity towards the support of people experiencing trauma and healing from trauma. I'm trying to do a lot. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Phil. Next, I'd like to move to Will. Just a quick update for the audience. Unfortunately, Scott has had some logistical issues getting here with the road conditions. So he's actually going to be turning around and going back to Fort Collins. And so hopefully he'll be able to Zoom in with us. So I'd like to pose the same questions to you, Will. Would you like me to repeat them, or do you? So the questions for the group are, the opening question is, from your point of view, what is the best possible outcome for the future of psychedelic medicine? And what is your group either doing or dreaming of doing to make this a reality? So Will, if you'd like to give us your response, if you could.
Well, first of all, I want to also recognize these pioneers and mentors and leaders. Phil and Scott, you've been incredibly important in my life, and for the future of this endeavor that we're all in here of bringing psychedelics responsibly forward and not having a backlash like we had in the 60s. I'm deeply grateful for the work that you've both done here. And for you, Naveen, for bringing things together here. And it's wonderful to connect with you, Mark, as well, again, after all these years. I think that, first of all, I want to say that Phil is a modest guy who underemphasized the contribution of research that you've made, Phil. And so with regard to the future of psychedelics, I think one thing that is beautiful that's happening now is a whole bunch of research. And so I think that in the future, we're going to have a lot more information about different psychedelics. We're going to have trials that we don't have currently, like looking at the difference between psilocybin for depression versus ketamine for depression. We're going to have studies like looking at ketamine-assisted psychotherapy versus MDMA-assisted psychotherapy for PTSD. So I think part of the future is having a lot more information, and that's going to come with a lot of heavy lifting from people who are committed to that cause of bringing psychedelics into the mainstream, according to the powers that be and the current way of operating in the mainstream, which seems to be, for the time being anyway, putting things through the FDA and doing these really important studies of head-to-head trials and double-blind placebo-controlled trials. So thank you both for the effort that you've put in and you continue to put in to bring that forward. I think my view about the future of psychedelics is slightly less ambitious than the utopian view that you have, Phil, that you rolled out. I don't know whether free access is something that is going to happen in my lifetime, or if that's even the best way. I think it's important for practitioners to be fairly compensated for their work and their efforts. And I think that my personal view about the money is that there is a form of conscious capitalism or conscious for-profit endeavors that don't have to necessarily be sort of promoting this dystopia that you talked about with regard to money. But I do think that we're going to have a huge issue with supply and demand. We're going to have a big problem with a bottleneck around people who are adequately trained, and we're going to have problems with access based on the financial aspects. So in my sort of future world that I'd like to see open access for people with third-party payers getting involved, which is probably going to require that research to be a lot more robust. And I also want to see that the knowledge about set and setting becoming much more of a mainstream and sort of matter of fact reality in our culture, which I think is really important for the things that Phil talked about of people using psychedelics without having adequate training or understanding about set and setting and how to hold space in a safe way. So what are we doing about it? Am I already at my time, Naveen? Okay, I'll just say it in a couple sentences. We're trying to create models that will be delivery systems for people to be able to access psychedelic treatments on a big scale. So that's what we're working on. And also training practitioners in our institute to know how to effectively use psychedelics in the bigger context of mental health. I don't perceive that psychedelics are the answer to all the problems. I don't think anybody on this panel does, but I really want for practitioners in our field to know how to recognize other issues and how to treat them, and putting psychedelics in that context. Thanks for the extra time.
Well, thank you so much, Rob. Now I'd like to pose the same question to Scott. Scott, can you hear us?
Yes. Yes,
Wonderful.
I can.
Scott, would you like me to repeat the question, or?
I think I have a sense of it.
Okay.
So I would build on what Will said, and first of all, welcome and sorry for my tardy arrival. And it's nice to be among old friends and new friends. So happy to be here. I would say that I agree with Will that research it's important that we have the academic support for the credibility. At the polar extreme of that, I think, is access for every man, every woman, every person. And I think, we're 5 to 7 years away from insurance reimbursement if we're lucky. And in the meantime, we've got a lot to do. So I think my feeling is that groups are going to be the way that this is going to turn around, that we're going to be able to make this, which is currently an elite form of care right now. And to make it a common person's care, we need to make it really cheap and accessible. And I think groups are the way to do that. We have begun doing groups with ketamine for mental health practitioners in terms of doing process groups. And in the next few months, we're going to be rolling that into patient care for groups, trying to keep the price, I think, under $100 per session, if we can do that, because ketamine is cheap. And if we can manage the numbers right, we can do this in a safe and economical way. I think the other piece that Will alluded to is that psychedelics are really just the high profile, fashion, trendy part of a new paradigm in mental health care. And people are jumping off the chemical imbalance boat that is burning in modern psychiatry. But until we have a reasonable boat for them to land on, people are going to be reluctant to make that big leap. And psychedelics are part of that new boat, but I think the broader piece that Will alluded to is integrative healthcare, because if we have a 12-year-old coming in with family issues and low-grade depression or anxiety, we're not going to step into psilocybin. And if we have a 30-year-old with mild depression who has a lot of problems with lifestyle, I don't know that psychedelics are the best first choice. So I think we need a broad panoply of options that really is integrative care, integrative mental health, and I think broadly based with groups and easy access. And then finally, I would say that we need to be brain-based. One of the problems we have in our current model, and this is both in conventional psychiatry and psychedelics, it's a trial and error. Let's just guess. Well, maybe psilocybin is the right option, maybe MDMA, well, maybe it's Prozac, maybe it's Zoloft. I don't know that we have advanced beyond this until we have a brain-based model where we can say, based on your EEG pattern, based on your biochemistry, you're going to do best with this, or based on your past issues and care, this is going to be the best fit for you. We are currently doing a lot of brain maps. We're looking at non-responders to ketamine and trying to understand what their brain pattern is on a QEEG, quantitative electroencephalogram. So I think we need to be brain-based. I think we need to have group access, and I think we need a broad option of care that is integrative mental health and integrative psychiatry.
Thank you so much, Scott. And now I'd like to address the same question to Mark. Mark, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, thanks. Thank you very much, Naveen. And it's really an honor to be sitting on this stage, sharing the stage with yourself, with Dr. Shannon, Dr. Derveer, and Phil. Really an honor. Never did I think when I started my medical career that I'd be able to be sharing the stage with these pioneers in the psychedelic movement and talking about psychedelics. So again, I just can't be any more blessed today or every day that I get to work on this. I think that we got some very interesting perspectives, starting with Phil's utopian perspective, moving on to a very practical perspective, I think from Will, and I appreciate Scott's scientific perspective. I'm going to come in now with, forgive me, but somewhat of a grandiose perspective on the use of these medications in the future. I think the world is in trouble right now, right? We have trouble getting along with ourselves. We have trouble getting along with the planet, breaking each other down, breaking the planet down. And I think a lot of us are concerned about, how much time we have left with this planet. And that's where I think these medications can come in. Really, maybe hoping to give humanity a longer stay of execution, giving us some more time to think in other ways than humanity has about how we can move forward, how we can get along, how we can save this planet. So I'm hoping that these medications really are the keys to opening up our minds to getting along with one another and the planet and helping to keep moving us forward. I agree with the other panelists wholeheartedly on the need to get this out to the masses. It can't be for a small amount of people, but we want to get this to the whole world. And yes, there's numerous problems. And where myself and my company, Reconcious Medical, comes in, is helping to apply technology to this and looking at technological solutions to assist in the deployment of this medication. So that's really what we're focused on, is getting this medication out to the masses and in a modern way to the times.
Thank you so much, Mark. So, guys, I'd like to now have a second round of questions, which I'd also like to pose to all of the panelists. I need to talk louder. Yeah. Okay. I'll talk louder. So, guys, I can't help myself on this question. I'm a sci-fi fan. I know that Scott's a sci-fi fan. I'm not sure about Will and Mark, but here we go. Okay. So, gentlemen, imagine that you are the spokesman for an advanced and benevolent alien civilization that is somehow aware of the various evolutionary trajectories that we on Earth might take. What might you tell the Earth psychedelic therapy community to hasten a more favorable healing trajectory for our planet? And I'll go in the original order. Phil, would you like to field that question?
Well, since I'm an avatar format, I'm gonna come back towards Earth as a girl. I want to be a woman. I'm tired. This is all men. It's a sick, screwed up thing that there are 5 men on this panel. So if I'm going to come back, I'm going to be a girl. And how beautiful I am will be up to you. But, given that my son did the infinite playa and we had avatars of all sorts and you could put on costumes, I think the feminine aspect is what I'd want to bring back to Earth. And the feminine aspect for me is love and kindness. It's male and female. And we as men have an obligation to adopt it. We're, after all, X chromosomes, half of us. And I want to I want to really feel my X chromosome working within the structure of my being a man. But I wanted to inform things. So if I'm looking at Earth, I'm saying down to Earth, you know, you need to get your shit together around this war stuff and this unkindness and this tribalism and this prejudice against each other, and recognize you all come from the Great Mother. Get your shit together and recognize you have perfect unity. And in that unity, you can do something. You can be kind to Mother Earth. You can develop sustainability. You cannot extinguish all the species. You can, you know, really come into a new kind of consciousness. What are you doing with your minds? How are you working with your minds? Are you watching television ads with commercials all the time? Are you doing YouTubes 24 hours a day? What are you doing with your minds and your creative lives? What are you doing with your love and your connection? How are you getting along? And, you know, we, from outer space, see how you're hurting yourselves. And we want to bring in a sense of kindness, loving kindness. So we're sending you, we're radiating down to you loving kindness from our girliness.
Thank you so much, Phil. Now I'd like to go to Will. Will, would you like me to repeat the question, or do you got it?
I got it. Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks, Naveen. I like what Phil said about the feminine, and I think that what I would say is, like, look, you guys have a very primitive nervous system, and you need to understand that, and you need to use the tools and the abilities that are available to you, including psychedelics, to stay, as my Buddhist teacher used to say, to keep refreshing the umbilical cord with the sacred, with the sacred feminine, to keep remembering that we are every molecule, every part of our spiritual and physical being is of the earth and from the earth. And so if I also would say that in order for people to be promoted into positions of leadership on this planet, there needs to be a better vetting procedure versus who can spend the most money on advertising. Come on, guys. I mean, do you really want that to be the determining factor for the people who have the most power on the planet to make the biggest decisions? I think you want to set up criteria that support the vetting of these primitive nervous systems. You want to say, look, leaders on this planet need to have a psychedelic experience that is deeply disturbing to them, to go deep into their own trauma and face it and address it. There needs to be a contemplative practice to keep these nervous systems regulated. There need to be diets that are optimized. And obviously this goes for everyone on the planet, but especially for the leadership, and where these decisions that Phil's talking about toward war and violence and the structurization of racism and greed and the whole 9 yards. It blows my mind that we don't have more rigorous requirements for leadership on this planet. And so I think from an alien standpoint, it would make sense that you would account for the grave limitations of our nervous systems and the capacity for us to live inside of a bubble of absolute disconnection from reality, that we would require these things. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Will. And now I'd like to pose the same question to Scott. Scott, would you like me to repeat the question, or do you got it?
No, I'm good. So I think I'm going to roll with the conceit of your question, in that we've got some fictionable capacity. And what I would do is I would collect 1,000 leaders from business, from academia, and from politics, beam them into a remote location, beautiful natural location, give them 300 micrograms of LSD, and then pick them up 24 hours later and see what's different.
500.
500. So, so that's the novel I would create with the aliens.
Wow. Thank you so much, Scott. Okay, so now we round out the question to Mark. Mark.
Thank you, Naveen. I would come down and I would say, get to work, people. The answer isn't in a pill. Spirituality, service, study, exercise, doing those things to work on getting better and getting along. Turn off your screen. Turn on your love light and let it shine. That's what I would tell the world.
Thank you so much, Mark. Wow. Okay, guys, so I want to circle back to a topic that I'm pretty sure I've heard Phil and Will mention. I believe Scott and Mark may have, and that's this question, and I'd like to also pose it to all the panelists because I think it's important, and that is commercialized interest in psychedelic medicine may be somewhat of a controversial topic. How can the privatized model of psychedelic medicine potentially improve the future of psychedelic medicine? So, Phil, I'd like to start with you, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Well, it is a complex question. I tried to address it. I've spent my career as a practitioner-based psychotherapist, psychiatrist within small groups and within larger organizational structures that cohered those small groups. It's a basic medical model in a way where the doctor is independent, and that independence for me has always been very pleasant because it's given me freedom. I think a lot of people coming out of med school these days have a notion of constraint, and I never had a notion of constraint. I thought I could do what I wanted to do and do it constructively. So I have trouble with organizations, and I've worked for public organizations at least half my career with different degrees of freedom, telling me how to practice and telling me what to do. Most of them have been governmental, and I've had some leadership roles in them, and so I've had relative freedom in them. I think the issues of commercialization are quality of care, constraints on people, and there are virtues on both sides. People who work for Kaiser get vacations. People who work solo practices get none. We don't get paid vacations. But then there's the speed up, and there's how do you get more out of someone, and how do you get more out of their work life, and how many people can they see, and how fast can they see them, and how can we get more efficient, and things that break apart the humanistic quality of the work. And so I'm very cautious about who is going to run the show and what their interests are. And I think that cautionary extends into what are we delivering, how best are we delivering it, and at what cost, both to us as practitioners, because I value my life as a practitioner. I like what I do, I love what I do, and I don't want to lose loving what I do to someone else's formulation about how I should proceed. I want to proceed in concert. I believe in cooperative models, and they work the best after all I've seen, from highly capitalist models to socialist, so-called socialist imposition, totalitarian models. Cooperatives are the only way we're going to get along, from my point of view.
Thank you so much, Phil. So now I'd like to pose the same question to Will. Will, would you like me to repeat it, or do you?
I think I got it. Thank you.
Okay, absolutely.
So this might be where I get a little utopian, Phil. I think that there's a spectrum from, the individual expensive restaurant, let's say, that only a few people can afford to go to, but where the chef is world renowned and makes 5 to 10 plates of the most amazing food every night, and the most elite people get to go there and have that food. And on the one hand, and then we have McDonald's with $3 trillion or 3 trillion people served or whatever. So to me, these are the extremes of sort of the individual model of the Dr. Shaman or the kind of mom and pop operation. And then, we have the kind of watered down, low quality option at the highest level of scale, let's say. And so where I get curious is about where, if we hold, first of all, I want to tip my hat to MAPS for really holding tightly to the reins of the quality of training. I think that's something that Rick has really stood for, and I applaud him for that. It's rigorous, it's long-term, it's difficult to get through, and there's all kinds of pressure to get more people trained. And Michael Mithofer and Rick and everyone at MAPS, I think, is doing a great job of refusing to sacrifice the quality of the training in the face of the need to get 10,000 or more therapists trained like now. So I think there's a happy medium in there somewhere where we can take a stand for the quality of the training, but be mindful of the expense to the public that comes from lack of access if we don't have enough people trained, if we don't organize ourselves in a way that allows thousands of people to be trained over the next few years. So I think we have to find that balance between the two. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Will. Scott, I'd like to pose the same question to you. Would you like me to repeat it? Or do you have?
No, I think I'm good.
Okay.
Well, I think in the psychedelic community, I think there's probably a deep mistrust of the commodification of psychedelics and of capitalism in general. That being said, it's the world we exist in, and we need to figure out a way to make models that are viable and even scalable, perhaps, but with access. We have a nonprofit, the Prati Group, and we've been funded by the Psychedelic Science Funders Collaborative, that are major funders of MAPS as well as MAPS, to put on building a psychedelic clinic workshop that starts in a couple of weeks in Denver and will repeat in a second part in February. And our thinking and our goal in this is that we need to get those 10,000 therapists that Will mentioned, we need to get them the ability to set up an effective business. And whether they're in Wichita or Seattle or New York City or Boston or even Fort Collins, Colorado, we need to help people figure out how they can create a viable psychedelic clinic. Because we've got training models that are rolling out, but we don't have people with the effective business skills needed to open up shop and create that competitive marketplace that is capitalism, the world we exist in. And I think when we see the full spread, we'll see everything from low cost, easy access models to what Will mentioned, which is, the sort of high-end models. And I think it's my belief that with the ability to spread this to the masses and give everyone the ability to open up a viable business, then we'll see the kind of variety and competition we need in the marketplace to bring this product to the people, which is, I think, everyone's goal here.
Thank you so much, Scott. Now I'd like to turn to Mark and address the same question to you.
Thank you, Naveen. I think that oftentimes medicine and business can be awkward bedfellows. How do we combine, an altruistic sense of serving and helping with a for-profit model? I think if we place the focus on medicine and service and doing well and helping people, in my experience as a clinician, the business and will be successful. And so if we can work in concert with one another, between medical practitioners and business people, it'll help with the faster scaling of this, the deployment to the masses quicker, and again, helping humanity quicker. So again, if we lead this with not the search for capital, but the search for helping and being of service. My experience in medicine, abundance is always followed if you do the right thing. So if the leaders in this industry can focus on practicing medicine and doing the right thing, the business people will be happy, and that will help to propel this to the masses.
Thank you, Mark.
Naveen, can I have the favor of 30 seconds?
Of course you can.
Thank you. I think, we're living in a bit of our own xenophobia. The adoption of psychedelic psychotherapy on a National Health Service Medicare for All model is available in countries that have Medicare for All. We're problematically posing this question because we live in a society that doesn't have National Health Service. And I think in Europe and other places, Canada, that absorption will be possible. The second part of it is, it's also a matter of how much money we want to make and how much greed we have. And so making accessibility to people is also by reducing fees or by doing groups. Yes, that's a great mechanism. Or by, gaining support from other organizations. So in our access to care, I cut my fee in half. I think, the question is, how much money do I want to make? What do I need? How far do I have to go? And we're in such a greed-imposed society that the amount of money that people want to make becomes, the guiding principle.
Thank you so much, Phil. So I'd like to shift the panel just a little bit, if I could. And I'd like to ask the following question to all of the panelists. How can the psychedelic community best respond to recent events in the US highlighting racial and economic injustice? So I'd like to start out with Phil. Phil, you'll have 3 minutes for us, if you would.
Well, I think it's a terrific problem we've been talking a lot about within the foundation and on the program we just ran. That's K-Dome, Microdome, and in terms of why, for instance, communities of color don't adopt more psychedelic psychotherapy, or why aren't women more involved? And we're trying to address that. For instance, in our Injured Neck Coalition, we have a people of color model that we're developing so that people can define themselves in relationship to the opportunities that psychedelics offer. But there's a great deal of prejudice around it, and we need to confront that, and we need to empower people to provide leadership in these areas. And we're going to be doing that and are doing that and are seriously involved in trying to develop communities that are responsive to the ethnic diversity and to sexual availability for women to be a major part of all of this. Here we are, 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Phil. Okay, Will, would you like to have a go at that question?
Great, thanks, Naveen. I appreciate you bringing an uncomfortable question for a Caucasian man like me, a leader who is very much in the conversation with myself and other friends of mine who are mostly white men about this confronting issue of privilege and race in this country. I had a conversation with a leader in the movement to stand for the abolition of structural racism in this country, Resmaa Menakem, a few weeks ago, and I gathered from that conversation with him, we had him as a guest on our podcast, the Higher Practice podcast, and from his book, My Grandmother's Hands, that there's a lot of work for us as Caucasian privileged people to actually look at the roots of and the structure of racial injustice in this country, and to really be in the conversation with myself and confront these issues that are very real for me as a white man who grew up in the South, where the structures of racial injustice were it was a well-oiled machine where there was very little confrontation of the roles that people were assigned into. So I guess I wanted to say that I think, first of all, I'm really excited about the chaos and the movement to open up awareness about these long-term issues in our country. It's a chaotic time. And I think what's happening is this patriarchal structure that Phil alluded to when he talked about the sacred feminine is beginning to break down. And I think that we're facing a reorganization of the power structures. At least that's my hope, is that we're going to see more access and more opportunity. So I don't have a quick answer to the problem. It's a big challenge, and I'm happy to be in the conversation.
Thank you so much, Will. Scott, would you like to respond to that question?
Sure, I would. It's an important question, and one I think we've all been struggling with. So at one end, I think that we can understand that psychedelic medicine has the ability, through its deep power, to connect and sort of a deep ecology, that sort of ecological connection that helps to break down boundaries and distinctions and create sort of an allergy to these constructed walls that are cultural, that are sociological, that are longstanding. So I think we can see that the psychedelic medicine itself, when properly integrated and properly used, can help be a tool for evolving this problem in a positive way. On the other hand, in a more practical way, the nonprofit that we work with has really integrated in a deep way these values of trying to address issues of equity and access. And we've made our training costs for ketamine-assisted psychotherapy and are building a psychedelic clinic programs available with deep discounts for people from disadvantaged communities. And we have a strong nonprofit flavor that says part of our mission is to spread this to all equally with solid access. So I think it comes in sort of, my view, these two poles that are sort of the ultra practical and the more theoretical.
Thank you so much, Scott. And now, Mark, I'd like to pose the same question to you.
Thanks, Naveen. Besides spending a lot of time as a psychiatrist, I've also spent a lot of time as a budding anthropologist. I've traveled the world. I've been to a lot of countries, and I've seen a lot of different cultures. And when I think about what are some similarities with all the places I've been to, regardless of skin color or gender or financial ability? Three things I can think of. One is technology. Everywhere I've been, people have smartphones. Everywhere in the world, no matter what color or how poor people are. Everyone has access to that technology. Another common thread is religion, right? Doesn't matter how much money you have or what color you are. People have a religion or a spiritual practice. And then there's education. Education is worldwide. So how can we make sure that within those platforms, we are targeting all demographics? And I think it's with our consciousness. If we are practitioners within this space preaching consciousness, let's think consciously of how we're going to deploy this information to the people. So I think through those three ways of technology, religion, and education.
Wow. Thanks so much, Mark. So audience, I don't know about you, I would be just delighted if this conversation and this panel could go on all day. But alas, yeah, all good things must come to an end. So I'd like to go ahead and wrap up the panel now, so we have a few minutes to transition smoothly into the next panel. Phil, Will, Scott, and Mark, thank you so much for just showing up with the kind of hearts that you guys do. It brings tears to my eyes. This is the future. We're all a part of it, and so much love for you guys.
Blessings.
Thanks, Naveen.
Thank you.